Former leader of the Oath Keepers militia.
President Trump did the right thing by letting these guys out and pardoning them because they did not get a fair trial.
Rhodes found guilty of plotting to use force against Congress to prevent the election certification, also accused of helping to stockpile firearms at a hotel in Virginia. He was one of 14 people released early without a full pardon, meaning they'll continue to face some restrictions.
The southern U.S. is being hit with a rare winter storm, prompting a first-ever blizzard warning along portions of the Gulf Coast, with heavy snow and wind gusts higher than 35 miles an hour expected in some areas today. In Louisiana, residents are being urged to stay home and limit their time outdoors. But some were heading to the grocery store on Monday to pick out some last-minute items. Former actor and radio personality John Spud McConnell was one of those preparing.
I got a couple of great big Boston butts, and I'm going to put them in the oven tomorrow morning when it's really cold. I'm going to bake them bad boys all day. Then I'm going to be eating pig like the pig that I am.
Meanwhile, Jeff Manasso has an update on the wildfires in Southern California.
The Palisades fire now over 60% contained. The Eden fire almost 90% contained amid the possibility of rain this weekend. And now an executive order from L.A. Mayor Karen Bass to shore up burn areas to stem the flow of toxic debris.
This is to prevent additional damage to areas already ravished by fire and also to protect our watershed, beaches, and ocean from toxic runoff.
President Donald Trump, who's been critical of the mayor, is expected to tour fire damage in California, as well as flood-ravaged North Carolina on Friday.
Christian pastors are being killed in the South American country of Colombia, victims of vicious drug cartels that run rampant in the country. Steve Jordahl reports.
2 Christian pastors have been murdered in Colombia in the past 2 weeks. On December 29th, Laura Rincon, his wife, and 2 kids were massacred. Then on January 8th, Pastor Ivan Dario Garcia Gonzalez was assassinated. Todd Nettleton, a voice of the martyrs, says it's likely drug cartels were responsible for all the deaths.
There is a lot of violence from FARC guerrillas and paramilitary units who want freedom to keep growing coca and keep making money in the drug trade, and Christians are often among the targets.
He says the Colombian cartels are ruthless and persistent.
Many of these groups, part of their income comes from protection rackets. And especially a pastor who they would say, hey, you're taking offerings in your church. We need those offerings. That should be money for us.
Nettleton says the Colombian government is not involved in the killings, but neither are they much help.
The government posture has very much been, let's make peace, let's get along with the guerrillas, rather than let's fight the guerrillas.
Most people think Christian persecution only happens in Muslim or communist dictatorships, but Nettleton says Central and South America are becoming more dangerous by the day because of the drug cartels.
There are places in southern Mexico where Christians are persecuted by sort of communist-leaning groups. Also, Venezuela is a country that has seen increasing persecution.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
More buoys are being placed along the Rio Grande in Texas. Chris Foster has more.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott posted a video of border buoys being placed in the Rio Grande shortly after President Trump was sworn into office. The buoys have been used as part of a state program meant to stop migrants from illegally crossing the river. The federal government sued Texas in 2023 to get the floating barriers removed, claiming they violated federal law. A district court initially sided with the Biden administration, but that was overruled by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Chris Foster, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty P.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, and we will help you find healing. 866-482-LIFE.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character code.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful day. It's even snowing in Fredericksburg, Texas, where I am. Just this sense of, I don't know, it's like purity, right? It's like this cleansing that the whole nation is feeling right now. What a shift for our country. And it was captured right there at the beginning of the inauguration yesterday. If you were watching online and the video shot, you had this I'm trying to think of nice adjectives. I'm trying not to be as caustic as I can sometimes be. But this Democrat U.S. Senator who was one of the two to chair the committee for the inauguration, and she's rambling on and on about how we're a democracy and everybody needs to be nice to each other. You know, where was that 4 years ago? Anyway, she's given her, 2 cents of fame, 15 minutes of fame, and it was almost 15 minutes. It was crazy. But anyway, she's going on and on and on. And just to the right of her is Joe Biden, fallen asleep at the beginning of the inauguration, and just to the left of her is Donald Trump, literally with his feet on the ground, fidgeting, and you can see it in his eyes. He's like, let's get this going. Come on. He's impatiently with his eyes saying, hurry up, let's get this thing done, and let's get to work. And that, to me, was a picture of the transition. For the last 4 years, we've had someone who was not mentally capable of doing the job, and therefore you had all of these bureaucrats behind the scenes. This man does not even know all the people that he ended up, literally cop killers that he pardoned, and just the disgusting things that were done in his name over the last year. And I'm not saying he's a good guy. Joe Biden was never one of the good guys. He was always a nasty guy. He was always a vindictive guy. He was always the Biden crime family syndicate. That was not, new in the last few years. That's been 50 years of living off of you and me, the taxpayers, and selling us down the river. But to shift from that to this new president, new to us now anyway, for his second term, who is absolutely implementing more in the last 24 hours than Joe Biden did in his entire 4 years, and maybe more than Donald Trump actually did in his first term. I mean, it is astounding what has been done. Now, I told you yesterday that there's constitutional executive orders and unconstitutional executive orders, and that I'm going to call balls and strikes no matter who the president is, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Green Party, Libertarian, Daffy Duck, doesn't matter. I don't care what their party is. I'm going to call balls and strikes. And so Donald Trump, being a Republican and now governing like a conservative, doesn't mean he gets a pass. So if he does an executive order that is unconstitutional because it's actually creating a new law that was not within the execution of the law passed by Congress or authority given to the president under the Constitution, then I'm going to call that out. And so I'm looking at these. All right, we got 200 of these that are going to be done in the first 24 hours, so it's going to take a while. But so far, I'm telling you, man, this is by the book. The team that he has around him is absolutely stellar, and they've been working on this for more than a year to be ready for day one, to be ready to do these things, and it is absolutely stellar. Now, I want to start with what happened after the program yesterday. So I think at the time we did the program yesterday, he was starting to sign some of these. When Walker called in from D.C., he had just signed, I think it was 8 or 10 or whatever it was. Well, after the program yesterday, about 5 o'clock my time in Texas, no, I'm sorry, it was closer to 7 o'clock, whenever he did a slew of additional executive orders. He'd already done some at the arena with the parade and all that, and then he was in the Oval Office doing some. And that's when he did the one that absolutely broke me. I'm telling you, I sat here and I was just about to go live last night. I do a national class every Monday night, going through the Constitution and history. And anyway, we were just about to go live when I'm trying to catch up on the executive orders and what's going on with Trump. And he does the one on the J6 defendants. And I'm telling you, I lost it. And it was now, if you're watching online, maybe you can see over my left shoulder to your right of me the John McNaughton painting. You've seen the one on the other side that is the Eagles literally saving the Constitution from the fire. That's where we've been in playing defense for the last 4 years. The other one across on my set here for the tavern is the John McNaughton painting of a J6 defendant in solitary confinement. And I don't know how to express this, but I guess let me get personal for a second. So I've had a 1/10 of 1% of what these J6 defendants have gone through for the last 4 years, the boot of government on their neck, the injustice that comes when the justice system is used to persecute opponents and just be completely unjust. I've had 0.1% of what these people went through. First, as a kid, when I was 10 years old, my dad became politically active and ended up, because of that, being a target. And long story short, spent a small amount of time, about, I think if I remember right, it was about 6 months in prison. And when you're 10 years old, that sticks with you. And I remember the pain of that and going to visit him. And I remember the pain of what our family went through. And I remember how much it shook my dad. And, so it had a big impact on me. And then when I was in the legislature 25 years ago, I became basically the test case for a lot of this lawfare, more than 2 decades ago, when corrupt prosecutors, Democrat prosecutors in Texas, came after another Republican senator and myself. I was in the House, he was in the Senate, on this absurd, ridiculous thing that was completely used to try to destroy our careers. And I was in a 50-50 district. I was an easy target for them to, if they could create some negative press, to cause me to lose the election. So that's what it was really all about, because the Republican-Democrat split in Texas was almost 50-50. I mean, Democrats had the Texas House for almost 150 years. Republicans had not had it ever since Reconstruction. And so here we were on the cusp of getting it. And this was the 2002 race when we finally did get it. So we got the majority in that election. And so I was in my second term running for my third my third term. So and it was a 50-50 district. And so they came in, they spent, a ton of money. I mean, I was the number one target in Texas. But it wasn't the campaign part that became such a painful experience. It was this quote-unquote criminal investigation that they used to try to destroy me politically. And 7 of the last 10 days of the election, on the front page of the big newspaper in the district, is, Rick Green's under criminal investigation. They never indicted me. They never actually – so it was nothing compared to what the J6 guys have gone through, but it was enough to put a black cloud over your life. I mean, and it was for months. I had to worry about being hauled off in handcuffs in front of my kids, and just it was just miserable. I mean, it was awful, and you didn't know how far this whole thing was going to go, and you're fighting the government, and so they've got unlimited money, unlimited pockets. They're corrupt. What they're doing is wrong. You see that the very thing they were claiming that I had done, tons of Democrat members of the legislature were openly doing. It had to do with being an attorney and representing clients and all this stuff, and without getting too far in the weeds, and members of the legislature that had actual power, where I was a sophomore with no power. It was an obvious selective prosecution and a political persecution, and they got me. They defeated me in the election barely, lost by a couple of hundred votes out of 45,000, but we got the majority. I like to think that we sucked a lot of the money from across the state into that fight in my district, and were able to win some other seats, and Republicans got the majority for the first time. Well, then after they saw that work, man, they went after another state rep the next time, the next cycle, and they got him. And then they went after Tom DeLay, the House Majority Leader in Washington D.C., one of the great champions of conservative policy, and they got him. And then they went after Rick Perry, and and then it just grew from there. And then of course Donald Trump and everybody else. And so the Democrats have figured out that lawfare, and at least up until now, has worked. It finally didn't work because Donald Trump had the money and the power and the network and the reputation to fight back. And so hopefully that tide is turning, and hopefully the pardoning of the J6 defendants also deters that kind of abuse of the justice system. I think that only happens if we go after the people that abused the justice system, that actually did wrong here, that actually selectively prosecuted these J6 defendants and the abuse that took place in these prisons. I think every prison guard in the D.C. gulag that beat up these guys, that abused them, that did things to them during COVID that were just unconscionable. It was like a third world prison system. They have to be prosecuted now, and there has to be justice for what happened to them. So went way down the rabbit hole there. I give you all that background to say, when I've watched these families be destroyed over the last 4 years, the reason I've championed them as much as I could, I actually feel guilty for not doing more, like not I almost quit everything I was doing and to do nothing but go work with Laura Logan and some of these other folks that really focused on helping the J6 defendants. I mean, it was a personal thing to me, and I've hated the fact that the only thing I've been able to do is rant about it on my various programs and bring on guests of people like Sarah McAbee, whose husband was a police officer that was there on J6 that was prosecuted and convicted of assaulting a fellow police officer because he bent over to help the guy and help him get up so that he wouldn't get trampled. And these scumbags that took over our justice system prosecuted Colton McAbee and got him 7 years. And believe me, these juries in D.C., it's a joke. This is not a jury of peers. This is an absolute scam what they've done. The judges, the prosecutors, the Department of Justice, all of it, totally corrupt. There hasn't been a single finding of innocence. How does that happen, right? How do you get a 100% conviction rate? You've got a rigged system. And so anyway, they got Colton, and thank you, Lord, he was released, I think, at close to midnight. Actually, it was 11:59 last night that he was released, and so praise God for that. And unfortunately, though, they're refusing to release a lot of these J6 defendants. So it's still going to be a battle. And even today, even at this middle of the day, we're still trying to get the pardon. We're literally having people get copies of the pardon and take them to the prisons and say, this is a blanket pardon. You cannot ignore this. Now, I get the fact that there's paperwork to be done. You got to make sure it's the right person, but they know. They absolutely know. And so what a shame. And the way that they're treating them on the way out, I mean, there was nearly a riot in D.C. at the Gulag last night over the way that they were treating them. And I saw all kinds of reports where people at the prison, officers and such, harassing even family members that were coming to pick up their family. So there were evil people in charge of this whole thing and perpetrating this, so don't expect them to just let go quietly. They are going to continue their evil for as long as they possibly can. But thank you, Lord, that the J6 national nightmare is over. That Donald Trump did what he said he would do, and to have a blanket pardon of 1,500. I think there were 6 commutations, and I think there's still a handful that are unknown. There were certainly some really bad actors mixed up that were part of this. I mean, there were Antifa people and others that instigated a lot of this, and so there are some individuals that I think it will take longer to work out. But for most of these people, the praying grandma Rebecca Lawrence and Colton McAbee that I mentioned, Jeremy Brown, I thought before I went live just a couple of minutes ago that he was not getting released. Apparently, I'm watching some of the tweets right now. He has been released, so praise God for that as well. But it's just story after story after story. I just have to say, justice is on the way, and these people being released is the beginning of that. But that's not enough. They need their lives put back together, and so I'm going to ask you as you're listening right now. If you have a J6 defendant that's coming home to your community, do everything you can to reach out to them and minister to them. Do not shun them. Do not think, oh, well, they might have done something wrong. Help these people. We're actually commanded in our religion to visit those in prison and to meet the needs of those kind of folks. And so I also want to give you a website, j6roadhome.com. Let me make sure it's .com and not .org. Yes, .com. j6roadhome.com. That's my friend Jenny McCombs. It's a ministry started right out of my church in Fredericksburg, Texas, and they're going to provide a place for some of these J6 defendants to be able to come and stay and put their life together, back together. We're going to provide work for them at the Patriot Academy campus. We're going to do everything we can to minister to these folks. They have been abused by their own nation. Abused by the nation that many of them fought for. Remember, 70% of these J6 defendants were law enforcement or military. So we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that this justice truly is restored. Stay with me, folks. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. You're listening to At the Core.
The abortion pill now accounts for over 60% of all abortions and continues to destroy millions of babies' lives. But in the midst of the tragedy, Preborn's network of clinics offers love, life, and the gospel to babies and mothers. After Jan took the abortion pill, she immediately regretted it.
Look at that baby. Look how beautiful he is. abortion pill reversal actually works. Let's hear his heartbeat. Oh, look how strong it is. Oh, praise God.
By the amazing grace of God, this baby was saved. But every day, we lose over 1,000 babies to this toxic pill. Would you join AFR and Preborn this week as we rescue 4,500 babies? To donate, please go to afr.net or call now at 877-616-2396. That's 877-616-2396.
Are you tired of all the un-Christ-like stuff out there today? Great. I am too. But let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the good, Christ-affirming resources, educational material, and family entertainment available at the AFA Resource Center. From encouraging and conversation starters, shirts, and sweatshirts, to good Christian books by your very own AFA staff. At the AFA Resource Center, you can even find Christian documentaries and lesson plans. With DVDs like The God Who Speaks and materials from the AFA Cultural Institute, the Resource Center is a great place for materials for you, your friends, or your church. But really, if you're tired of unsubstantial, un-Christ-like stuff, you should check out the Resource Center. Find it at resources.afa.net. That's resources.afa.net. Don't settle for a distracted culture, but set your mind on things above.
Hello, everyone. Tim Wildmon here with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, our tours for 2025, our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg and Boston, they're filling up. They're halfway full now. And we've never had a response quite like this. So what I'm saying is if you want to go with us this year, to either Colonial Williamsburg, which includes Jamestown and Yorktown, or Washington, D.C. and all the sites of our nation's capital, including Mount Vernon, or if you want to go with us to Boston and see the Freedom Trail and all the sites of the greater Boston area. If you want to go on these trips with us this year, it's time to check into the information and register so that you make sure you're on one of our tours, the one you want to go on, obviously. So go to the website wildmongroup.com. WILDMON group.com. Hope to see you on one of these in 2025.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach. And actually talking about those tours all over, up and down the history of America and going to these cool places. One of the best guys to have with you on one of those, Stephen McDowell. Always good to have you, brother. Thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure, Rick. Great to be with you.
Hey, Providence Forum has been doing incredible work for decades, and of course, you and David Barton have really brought so much of these things back to life, and I think people are more hungry for it now than ever, and therefore getting this information in as many hands as possible, this window of opportunity we have where they're actually willing to listen and talk about what the secret sauce is that produces a great nation. We got to go back and look at what made America great in the first place, and you do that so well with Providence Forum, and now doing it on a podcast on American Family Radio. So tell us about when this thing's starting and what's it going to be about?
Well, we're doing a new podcast called America's Providential History. That's the title of a book that we wrote almost 40 years ago. And so each week I'm going to be posting a new podcast, anywhere from 30 minutes or so, that deals with God's hand in our history. Because, see, God not only created everything, but he sustains everything that he created. And he does that by being actively involved in history in his creation. And so, therefore, when you look at history, if you ignore God, you don't have true history at all. And the way most history is being taught in our government schools today completely ignores God. And so what we want to do is highlight God's hand in history, and in particular in America's history, and see how it fits into God's plan and purpose for mankind. So that's the goal of this podcast. We'll have a new podcast released every Tuesday. It's going to be posted on the American Family Radio podcast site, afr.net, afr.net /podcast. You can also find it on our website, providencefoundation.com, as well. But it's just a way for us to begin to get out systematically in a verbal way a lot of these marvelous stories of the miracles God has done, and to get insight into why we're here, what's the purpose, and even how we can look at current events like President Trump and his election and inauguration. How does that fit into God's overall plan? So many things like this. So we're excited. We invite everybody to come participate, check out our podcast, and listen to it every week.
You know, Stephen, even talking about that providential view of history, and so seeing God in history, raising the God consciousness in America, and once again, kind of seeing even yesterday at the inauguration, the faith focus. Walker, I was trying to think of the phrase that Walker used yesterday in the program, but there was just such a faith perspective that seemed different than even Trump's first inauguration, but even in the last 20 years. And so that's what I mean when I say the window's open, right? That people are hungry for this stuff. They want to know how we get back to being great again, and you can feel that in the air for sure. And all the evidence is there. We just ignored it for so long. And so you've got what a great opportunity to educate more people about it. What are the types of moments in history where you would point people to right off the bat if they're just kind of a new student to this, right? If they're just now saying, I want to dive into this, what would you send them to first?
Well, in the first podcast released today, I give an overview of how the Bible is the rock upon which America rests. Without the Bible, without God and the Bible, the author of the Bible, there would be no America, no United States of America. Because the people who came and settled this nation were people of the book. They were a product of the Protestant Reformation. The Bible in the hands of the common people were the focal point of that Reformation. And just about everybody in early America, even the non-Christians, have had an understanding of the providence of God. And that's it. Yesterday in Trump's inaugural address, he acknowledged that very thing. If you remember, he said that, speaking of when he was almost shot, just by a millimeter missed, he said, I was saved by God to make America great again. And Franklin Graham in his prayer affirmed the providence of God in protecting his life because Trump believes it, Franklin Graham believes it, I believe it as well, because God wants to use him in order to extend his purpose in earth, to show mercy to our nation, and hopefully point us back to the principles upon which our nation was built. This was one thing unique about America. And so that's what the podcast is about. We're going to examine how God prepared and used men like George Washington, people we've heard of, but probably haven't heard of these providential events in his life, how he moved supernaturally during the American Revolution to bring about that victory, to give birth us as a nation. And even before that, looking at the founding of all of the colonies, that God's hand was involved in the beginning of Virginia and Massachusetts and Pennsylvania and all of the colonies. And the people that were a part of this looked at, they understood this, they spoke about it and said, somehow God is at work. We want to understand what God is doing. You can't really understand what's going on in history at this time if you don't understand this concept of the providence of God. So I would say, look anywhere in the first number of centuries of our history, and when you just look at the primary sources, you'll see God's hand. You'll see the providence of God. You'll see men acknowledge that, even non-Christians. I don't know the heart of President Trump. I don't know where he stands personally with God, but he obviously believes that in the providence of God, that somehow God had preserved him for a purpose to make America great again, because America has been the most free and prosperous nation in history, and that's because we were built upon the principles of Christianity, principles in the Bible. That's what made us great in the first place. If we're going to be great again, we have to instill those principles in the foundation of our law, our institutions, our family life, and our personal lives.
I started to say, as always, you predicted my next question and already answered it. But I think it's because it's exactly what people often wonder whenever you start talking about this. Yeah, okay, but are you just looking back at those events and you're saying God moved? Or are you saying that they knew it? And you said that. You said they acknowledged it. So, Washington, after the Battle of Monongahela, writes home to his mom and says, who knows that God's preserved me for something. I don't know why he preserved me and not anybody else, but clearly God did. And then other people like, Ben Franklin, right? I mean, he would be probably closer to a Trump camp, right? I mean, and yet he talked about the providence of God. So yeah, they acknowledged this back then. It's all right there. It's just been left out of our history books for so long. And so getting that back to where people can see that and learn that and share it is a critical thing. What would be a good resource from Providence that a Providence Foundation that people could use if they want to start introducing this education to their families, especially kids at home right now that aren't getting it from their public schools?
Yeah, they should get our book, America's Providential History. We've sold hundreds of thousands of those books over about 35 years ago, more than 35 years ago. And we give an overview of God's hand in our history. We talk about the principles, we tell stories. It's a great resource to introduce people. America's Providential History, you can get it on our website, providencefoundation.com. You can get it on Amazon and other places. That would be where I would start.
Yeah, and even the rhetoric of President Trump and those coming in with his administration, the acknowledgments of God, not only the acknowledgments of God's hand in our history, but even acknowledging God, something Jefferson said we should do, is a nice breath of fresh air. And yesterday we saw so much of that. I think I don't want to say I started to say it's cool to be Christian again, or it's cool to acknowledge God again, but it actually is. It's like William Wilberforce said, we got to make being good fashionable again. Well, we got to make acknowledging God fashionable again, and I think it's happening. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. There are, when you listen to a number of the men that Trump has appointed to his cabinet, so many of them, I know are genuine believers. They speak of God. They're not afraid to say that Jesus changed my life. And, because America, where we are, in early America, just about most people were Christians. Certainly acknowledged faith in God, only a few non-believers. But everybody had a biblical worldview. Today, we have a much smaller percentage of Christians and a very small percent have a biblical worldview, even non-believers. In early America, the non-Christians had a biblical worldview. Today, unfortunately, most Christians don't have a biblical worldview. But nonetheless, the culture of Christianity is so powerful that even after more than 100 years of trying to kick God out of public life, those principles are so built into our culture, they still are there. They still influence people, and God is still moving, pouring out his Holy Spirit. So in our battle of worldviews, we have a huge portion of the people who embrace the general principles of Christianity. But we have about the same amount who detest the principles of Christianity, really. And that's the battle we've been fighting out. Sometimes we get good leaders. On states, we have some great leaders today. And in some states, we have rotten leaders. And on the national level, we've kind of gone back and forth. And so that's why we got a lot of work to do to kind of shift the culture toward God. But we have, thankfully, providentially, many people have come in to say, yes, God is the life of our nation, and without him, there would be a United States. We're not ashamed to proclaim this truth, and so that seemed to have prevailed in this last election. But of course, just one election isn't going to turn the nation around. It is some indication to the heart of the people, which gives us great hope. But we have a whole lot of work to do to continue to work on the hearts and minds of the American people if we hope to have permanent, long-term transformations.
Yeah, amen. I mean, it's like you said, one election, it might give us air cover. We might be able to get the boot of government off our neck long enough to be able to teach these things and to speak freely and all of that. But we have to do something with that. We have to take action on that. Do you think, Stephen, there's a an awakening among the non-believers that is caused by the pain of the bad policies, the anti-God policies that create bad economics, that creates bad, lack of freedom, all of those things that we've seen over the last few years, so that you get the Elon Musk and Joe Rogan crowd that actually starts going, there's got to be a better way. How do I get the good results? More of a Ben Franklin analysis, right? I want the results. I may not believe in the divinity of Christ, but boy, those Christians sure make good citizens and make good neighbors. Do you think that's part of what's happening, and can that potentially lead to revival because those people are now open to the source?
Yes, I think there are indications there is true revival among many people, and I think there's indications that the exposure to the truth has revealed to open-minded people that the nature of the warfare. It's funny, you speak of Benjamin Franklin, who I don't claim him to be an orthodox believer. I call him a biblical theist. He believed in God, and it was basically the God of the Bible. But you may remember when Thomas Paine, who became a secularist, he wrote anti-Christian work, kind of arguing against Christianity. He sent it to Ben Franklin and said, "Hey, what do you think of my work?" This work in Franklin. Now, this is one of the least Christian of the founders. He wrote him back and rebuked him. So what are you doing? He said, it's to the Christian faith that you hold your own moral basis is built. It provided the culture in which you had the freedom to come up with ideas. Now you're attacking the very thing that gave you the freedom. It's like you're beating your own mother when you attack Christianity. So he rebuked the guy, said, I think this is awful. So even non-Christians, can recognize the source of freedom and liberty, and they can see the absurdity of what we've experienced in recent years when you're trying to say there's 100 different genders and, all the other stuff that those who hate God and godly institutions have thrown upon us. They say, this is foolish. This is foolishness to act this way. So, yeah, I agree both. The truth will set men free. The truth can give people a right understanding, and your Elon Musk can say, hey, there's some sanity living here. And of course, the revealed truth of the Christian faith, what Christ has done for us, can set us free, not only in our mind, but firstly in our heart. So, yeah, and I have hope for the future of America. As I look around and see lots of people awakening, doing things, trying to learn, Lord, what can I do? How can I influence my family, my business, my culture, taking action. Now, we need a lot more to be done, but if I saw nothing happening, I might be a little discouraged, but I see many things happening that give me hope.
Yeah, me too, man. And you use the word awakening. I mean, it could be a great awakening. It could be a situation where that hunger and that interest and that desire to avoid the pain causes them to listen enough to things like your podcast and learn what that secret sauce is, and then come to those truths, and we could have a complete national awakening on that. So the name of the podcast again, are you calling it the same as the book? Is it America's Providential History?
It's a great name. I love the term providence. That's God's superintending care over his creation. So it's America's Providential History podcast. And if you go to afr.net podcast, it's one of those listed among the many others that they make available.
I'm just glad to know that you pause when you're giving out the website like I do. I'm always like, is it .net? Is it .org? I have to, but it's .net, folks. AFR.net. Yeah. Go get that podcast of Stephen McDowell. Stephen, God bless you, man. So appreciate all that you do, and so glad that you got the new podcast coming out. Let's educate folks and get that great awakening coming. Stephen McDowell, appreciate you, bro.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, folks, stay with us. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. When we come back, your calls, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. What was your favorite part of the inauguration yesterday and all of the executive actions? And, what was the highlight for you? I'd love to hear from you. 888-589-8840. We'll be right back.
What we believe about the Bible is based on what we believe about its source.
The God Who Speaks, the award-winning documentary from the American Family Association, is now available in a special limited edition DVD set. This release includes a Sunday school curriculum and 2 hours of additional footage. Go to thegodwhospeaks.org to get your copy today. thegodwhospeaks.org.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe that our ministry, as well as everything in the heavens and on earth, belongs to God, and our role is that of a trusted manager.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
Abraham, I know our hearts and prayers are with those affected by the Israeli conflict in the Middle East. Here's a great need right now in that part of the world. Nora is a born-again believer. She's a widowed mother of 4. Her husband was killed by a terrorist cell, and one day radicals showed up and burned her house down, nearly killing Nora and her 4 daughters, the youngest of which 4 years of age, maimed for life with very serious burns. Now, her crime is, number 1, she's a born-again believer. Number 2, she was found to be educating her daughters beyond the age of 8. In that system, that is a serious violation. But I can tell you, rather than grow bitter, Nora has introduced about 50 Arabic-speaking women to Christ. They need Bibles in the Middle East. We want to bless 16,000 Bibleless believers. You've done it for 12,000, 4,000 to go. By January 31st, $5 sends a Bible, $100 sends 20. Abe?
You can give by calling 800-YES-WORD, 800-YES-WORD, or visit sendbiblesnow.org. That's sendbiblesnow.org.
Michael grew up in a great home. Mom and Dad were both attentive, caring, and wanted the best for him. But when Michael entered high school, their good intentions morphed into something they never intended. Hi, I'm Mark Gregston with Parenting Today's Teens. Michael's mom was involved in everything he did. He couldn't make a mistake without his mother jumping in and fixing it. He didn't have to be responsible. His mother covered it all. That led to a crisis when Michael was 16. He completely shut down and resorted to unhealthy behavior just to get his mom off his back. Smothering our sons always backfires. Mom, take a deep breath and begin backing off. Your son will never grow up if he never feels any pain.
Find books and other resources online at parentingtodaysteens.org. That's parentingtodaysteens.org.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Phone number is 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. Would love to know what your favorite part of the inauguration was, or maybe it's one of the executive orders or something else that happened yesterday that gives you hope for the future of our country. There's so much we're going to be able to do in the next few weeks, months, years, literally. I mean, we need to be thinking in those terms. I think we're basically at Yorktown. So we've essentially won the war by winning that big battle. And Yorktown was 1781. Let's not forget. So it was another 10 years after that. So you win the big battle that finally wins the war, even though they didn't sign the peace treaty for another 2 years. And it was actually 10 years from 1781 before we had the Constitution ratified, the Bill of Rights ratified, and we were really off to the races. I think that's where we are right now. We're in 1781 for our revolution. And it's going to be 10 years of us building this thing. We have to rebuild liberty in America. So there's a lot to do, and it's going to be fun, actually. It's an exciting time to be alive. I want to give you an action step today that is very specific to rebuilding liberty. In fact, saving lives so that they can be free. Let's not forget, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We start with life, and then we get liberty and the pursuit of happiness. You're not going to be able to pursue happiness if you don't have liberty. You're not going to be able to enjoy that liberty at all or act on it if you don't have your life. So we got to protect life. And one of the best ways to do that is to give to Preborn. We're partnering with Preborn because we know it saves lives. Preborn's literally in direct competition with the abortion industry. They go in and try to interrupt the process by getting the mom to come do an ultrasound. And when she sees the baby, it doubles the chance that we're going to be able to save that life. And so for Preborn to do that, they got to have the ultrasound machines. They got to have the ability to get out there and get to the mom. They got to have the ability to advertise, all of those things that it takes to get mom to come do that ultrasound and see those babies. Well, you can be a part of it. It's actually a great activity for you to be involved in because it's real results. It's literally saving lives. The numbers are absolutely astounding. Let me see if I get this right here. Got to look at my notes. 80,000 women have surrendered their lives to Christ as a result of this. That's over the last 18 years of what Preborn's been doing with these clinics across the country. Now get this number. More than 300,000 babies have been saved. 300,000. How about let's be part of saving at least one today? $28 is what it takes for that ultrasound. $28. $140, 5 ultrasounds. Or maybe you want to help sponsor ultrasounds for the entire preborn network of clinics for one day. That's $5,000. Whatever your donation is, it's going to save lives. You know, some people think, oh, yeah, Rick, you built all that up. Just ask for money. You know what? It takes dollars. It takes fuel in the tank to go out and do any kind of ministry. It takes dollars to be able to do those things. For me to educate people on the Constitution, I can give my classes away for free all day long, which I do. But I still got to pay for the technology to provide that class online or the DVDs or the thumb drives or whatever. It takes fuel in the tank to do any of these things. In this case, you're going to actually save lives. Here's how you can do it. AFR.net, that's the easy way. AFR.net, go there right now. Make that $28 contribution if you want to save one baby today. Get that ultrasound for one mom. If you want to have 5 ultrasounds available for moms, $140. You can do it today. $28, $140, or anywhere in between, whatever the Lord puts on your heart. $5,000 would pay for those ultrasounds for the entire preborn network of clinics all over the country for one day. So you can do it at afr.net, or you can call in 877-616-2396. That's 877-616-2396. Or go to the website. That's the easiest way, afr.net, and make that contribution today. It's a big deal. You're actually going to save lives. All right, let's head over to the phones. This number is 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. I'd just love to hear from you about what your favorite part of the inauguration yesterday was. We'll start in Mississippi with Norman. Let's see if I can get the my software closed out. You guys help me out and see if you can open it up to Norman. Norman, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go for it, brother. What was your favorite part of the inauguration and the festivities yesterday?
My favorite part was the peaceful transfer of power. Because I felt like if we had a repeat of 2020, we would have, as a country, lost our ability to be civil.
Amen, brother.
That's exactly what I felt.
Yeah. It was surreal, wasn't it, to watch the especially being in the rotunda. I mean, it was like, I know we're normally watching it on the South Steps. Reagan was actually sworn in the rotunda his second term. So in 81, they had the big speech outside on the steps with the big crowd. But 85, they had to go inside. Same reason, cold. I think there were probably some security reasons both times as well. But being in the rotunda, it was visual for us, right? We could see the very room where 4 years ago there was so much chaos and it became the Rostock fire for the left to try to destroy their political opponents. And, it was just such a contrast to watch it peacefully happen in the rotunda. And it made it more intimate. I think it made you feel it even more, that peaceful transfer of power. The fact that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Bill Clinton and George Bush and Barack Obama and all of them were sitting there, and it was tough, right? I mean, they had to sit there and they didn't exactly smile and they certainly didn't clap, but they had to sit there and acknowledge, right? They were acknowledging that the American people had spoken, that Donald Trump was going to come in and do the exact opposite of what all of them had done. And he's, for 30 minutes, he's literally, not literally, he's figuratively punching them in the face. I mean, he's just giving them gut punches, face punches. He's quite literally saying, we're going to fix what these people messed up over the last 4 years. We're going to turn this thing around, and we're going to be common sense about it. And did you notice how calm his voice was? First, really the whole speech, well, almost monotone. It was just so serious, all business. Here's what they did. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to save the nation. It was beautiful. And the fact that it was peaceful, that they did, in fact, show up, and that once he was sworn in, Together we all sang with Carrie Underwood, America the Beautiful. And boy, the prayers. Wow. As Walker said yesterday, make note, man, all Christian and Jewish prayers, and they were powerful, as we said yesterday, bold prayers. It was wonderful. All right, I've given too many of the things I like. Let's go back to the phones. How about Phil in Texas? Phil, what was your favorite part yesterday?
Well, I like all the good things he said. It was kind of like we're going to get back to what's more normal, whatever that is anymore. And the best part I thought, was he emphasized the importance of common sense, which is pretty much gone out the window these days.
Yes. Yeah, man, I love that. I mean, just the fact that he even used that phrase and said that in front of, again, all those people that had brought in the lack of common sense, right? He said that right there in front of all the people that allowed the insanity, actually ushered in the insanity because it played to their Marxist plans. I agree, man. That was one of my favorite lines the whole time. We've said that so many times right here on the program, right? That it's just a lack of common sense. We quite literally have been acting insane. We've been doing Romans 1. We've been outside of our minds in the things that we've done as a nation. And so the fact that he said we're bringing back common sense, great point. Yep, love that as well. Okay, we'll go to Tennessee. Brenda in Tennessee, you're up next. Go ahead, Brenda.
Hello. What I love most, I was driving down the road, and when he said male and female would be the recognized sexes in the United States, I loved it.
I did too. Brenda. Did you think too at that moment? You're thinking, why does he even have to tell us this? But we know why, right? Because the left has gone so crazy. It's almost like we have to teach 2 + 2 is 4 again.
Absolutely. And I don't know what makes people gay. I know it's not God, because it's a hated sin of God. And if you go against God, you're just it's a uphill climb.
Yeah. Well, you're going against the laws of nature, and nature's God both, right? I mean, he designed the nature of man, and he designed us to work a certain way, and to not only to violate that in the actions that you do, but then to go into this psychological crazy place where you make up genders and the idea that you would call yourself following the science while you're rejecting science. That's the crazy part. So it is common sense. It is male and female. All of these things, absolutely true. All right, we're getting your favorite party yesterday, 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. Patrick in Virginia. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you. I live in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and not Fredericksburg, Texas. But my favorite moment was just the actual moment. I got teary-eyed when it was surreal that it was actually happening. I've been praying for this man for years, and my prayer has been the last 3 elections, 2016, 2020, and now on my knees, just, Father God, wake up your remnant bride church and put the unbelievers to sleep. And I'm just so thankful that God woke up enough believers to sweep this man back in. And I live in Washington. I tried to get into the pre-inaugural Saturday, and there was 50,000 people showed up at the arena. Only 20,000 got in. But I met a lot of people on the subway, metro, from all over the country. It was just neat to see these patriots, conservatives, Christians.
Yes.
And I went to January 6th, and just the whole thing Trump is talking about. Why is he talking about it so much? Well, he got impeached over it, and it was a lie. The big lie was not that the election was stolen. The big lie was that it was not an insurrection. And yes. I'm writing a book about the Trump erection, a monumental movement. And so, anyways,
you're so right. The whole idea that it was an insurrection, and no one was charged with that, and yet they have managed to cement that narrative into so many people's minds. I think that's one of the big things. Like you said, when when the oath of office took place, the reason that was so surreal and so sweet and so monumental is that it rejected the narrative, right? If the narrative was true, if it really had been an insurrection, if he really was willing to overthrow the government or reverse the actual election that took place, rather than what was actually happening on J6, which was demanding that Congress just do their job under the Constitution, and that the vice president do his job under the Constitution, and that they not allow electors to be counted that had been done through an unconstitutional process, which is what happened in those 6 states whenever those states had their election law changed without the legislature. And so that's all people were actually asking for, was for the Constitution to be followed, not for an election to be reversed, not for a government to be overthrown. All of that, complete lies. And so the swearing in of Donald Trump actually rejected that narrative and proves that what took place on January 6th, the lie about what took place, was a lie, and that it was not, in fact, an insurrection. So very good point, man. Okay, let's go to Arkansas. June in Arkansas. What was your favorite part of yesterday?
I really liked the merging of Dr. Martin Luther King's view of his American dream to how President Trump was talking about going back to
well, even specifically, June, I mean, the best part of his comparison to MLK, in my opinion, because frankly it's what I believe as well, and that we've said many, many, many times. We even did a whole television show on MLK called Communist King or Peaceful Crusader, debunking a lot of the myths about MLK and reiterating that what he said, when he said that we should be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin, that philosophy used to be what people wanted in America, and that for 60 years we championed that and moved towards that. And then because of the BLM riots and because of the Joe Biden philosophy and because of the evil Marxism that was allowed to be perpetrated on our people, we reversed that. And we went to this DEI nonsense, didn't earn it, and that said you should be judged based on the color of your skin, regardless of the content of your character. The exact opposite of MLK. So what Donald Trump said yesterday was, we're getting rid of that nonsense, the DEI nonsense, and we're getting back to what MLK actually said. So it was a beautiful moment, a poetic moment to do that on MLK Day, have Donald Trump sworn in and bring back MLK's philosophy, and who was a Republican, by the way, so that might have something to do with it as well. All right, let's get one more in. Joy, you got like 60 seconds before we're gone. So go ahead. What was your favorite part of yesterday?
My favorite part yesterday, other than the whole thing, were the prayers, especially the young black pastor from, I believe he was from Chicago.
Sewell was his name, I think. Lorenzo Sewell.
That was just marvelous.
It was. I was shouting. I don't know about you. I'm like standing up shouting as he's. It was so good. It reminded me so much of a reenactment we did of Henry Highland Garnett, a black pastor that spoke in the Capitol when the 13th Amendment was ratified and slavery was outlawed under the Constitution. And of course, being MLK Day and just the rhyme and the rhythm that he did it with. And the voice that he had, it was so good, man. I loved it. That's a great one to end on today, June. Thank you for that. So much yesterday that was fantastic. We haven't even gotten to a 1/100th of the good stuff from yesterday. We'll cover more of the executive orders. We'll talk about all those things throughout the week. You got to keep listening to At the Core because there's so much more we got to cover throughout the year to actually rebuild liberty. Not just have a big celebration, but do the hard work of rebuilding liberty. I'm Rick Green. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.